Hello, 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 and welcome. I know folks are going to start joining the live soon, so I'm just going to wait for a few folks to get started. But I am excited to talk with today's guest. I see we already have people joining. Hey, Christian, hey. I'm just waiting for a few more folks to join the live before we get started with interviewing today's guest for CCS Alumni Live. I'm really excited to talk to who we're going to be chatting with today. We have somebody who I look up to, even though they're younger than me, because of her creativity, her style, and just her all around amazing personality. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest before I have her join in on the conversation. And as people join in, they can catch up with the conversation. So we're going to give it like maybe 60 more seconds for folks to join in. Then I'll do an intro of our guest, Nabeela Najjar, and then we will get started. Hi, I see folks are tuning in. I don't know about you guys, but it's hot in my house today. I was not prepared for the drastic jump in temperature. I see some more folks are joining in. Alrighty, so I'm going to just get started introducing our guest. So today we're going to be talking with Nabeela Najjar. She graduated from CCS in 2016 with her degree in crafts from our fiber and textiles department, and she focused heavily on costume and fashion design, which is what she's doing now since graduating. Her work is inspired by dreams and has a heavy emphasis on nature. Her work can be described as mystical, ethereal, and otherworldly. Her work has been seen in galleries and in event spaces. She's done windows displays. She's done work for musicians. She's had her work clearly on catwalks because she's a fashion designer. And she's been featured by several different organizations and platforms like Drinks by Design, Pecha Kucha, I never can say that right, the Detroit Design Ball, and the Detroit Center for Design's Technology and Sustainable Fashion exhibition. So I am going to have our guest join us on the line. Miss Nabeela Najjar. Whoop, 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 whoop. It's connecting. Look at you. Of course, you're outside by some flowers. Of course.
Hello.
How are you, Nabeela?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's so wonderful to see your face.
I know. I haven't seen you in forever.
It's been a while. Well, I'm glad that we get to do this talk today. It'll be obviously for students to learn about you and your path, but for me to catch up too. Alrighty. So I want to start off, the way that we'll do this is I'll start off asking a few general questions just about your path from high school to where you are now. And then at the end, we'll open it up for folks who are joining us on the line to ask their questions as well. So if you're watching and you have questions about fashion design, costume design, crafts, being a student at CCS, being a graduate at CCS, make sure you're adding your questions as we go along in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Instagram screen. It's the little square with a question mark on it, and I'll make sure to ask those live right here with Nabeela. So let's get into this conversation. Nabeela, you have a very unique style of fashion and costume design. So I just wanted to start off learning a little bit about you and your work. Can you explain to the folks who are tuning in a bit about what inspires you and what your process is like?
Yeah. Nature. Like you said it before. Nature is like the main thing that inspires me. As you can see, my tree. I kind of start when I design garments. I start with a blank canvas. I think of it like a root of a flower or a root of a plant. You know, like before it blooms, it's kind of just like, just a bare like surface. That's kind of how I think of my garments. I start off with like a bare surface, and then I love embellishing them either with flowers or even just fabric that's manipulated into flowers. So I would say honestly, nature is like my biggest inspiration when it comes
It
to
shows. It definitely shows.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who haven't had the chance to see some of the images I shared, make sure people can follow you, right?
Yeah.
Make sure you follow at Seamstress Beela because her stuff is gorgeous, is beautiful. All right. So can you bring us up to speed with what you've been doing since you graduated from CCS? What are you doing in your career as a costume designer and fashion designer?
Yeah, so I've done a lot. I've done some exhibitions. After graduating, I did like my first exhibition. It was with a couple of my friends and my sister. It was at the library downtown. Um, Not the Skillman Library branch downtown. That was one of the first exhibitions I had ever done and like put on. Super nervous, but it turned out awesome. I've done various fashion shows, other exhibitions like showing my work and different things. I would say my biggest um, achievement that I'm proud of is the sculpture I did for the DIA last year. It was like this time last year.
Aw.
And that was like the first time I had ever designed a sculpture, and like for it to be in the DIA, I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And like since I had never designed a sculpture, I still tried to use like my costume and fashion elements. So it still kind of looked like a garment, but it was like, because I used all the same materials, but it was a sculpture. So yeah, and I also work part-time, like doing alterations. I do a lot of alterations, some from home, and then I also work part-time at Dietrich Fair.
Oh, like Dietrich Fair, like Dietrich.
Yeah. Which is crazy. They've been around for like over 100 years.
Yeah, that's a legacy brand in Detroit for sure.
So I work part-time altering fur coats.
Cool. That's awesome. So tell me this. You consider yourself a costume and fashion designer, but are you open to doing more sculptural work or more other types of craft like you did for the DIA?
Yeah, like after doing that and knowing that I was capable of doing it, I would for sure. It's something I definitely want to get into. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. And then I always take people in a time machine. Before we jump in our time machine, I have one more question about where you are today.
Okay.
Like what are your future plans for what you're doing? I know you do a ton of things. Like I was just looking up, some of your stuff before we did this live today, and I was just like, Nabeela's done some of everything. Do you have like a specific thing that you want to do for the future or moving forward?
Yeah, so my biggest goal is to do costume for either film or like plays, opera. And I got my chance to do that last year also. There were these dancers, and they reached out to me about designing garments for them. So they were performing at the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and it was through Drinks by Design, actually. And they commissioned me to make garments, and they performed them on stage. And that was like the first time I had seen like people like performing and like dancing in my garments, and I was like, all right, like that's
it.
Yeah, that's like one of my ultimate goals.
That sounds beautiful, and I can imagine just you thinking about the fabric you use and the way that you apply material to your design forms, like how that looks in motion. I can just imagine how beautiful that is.
It was so cool.
That is so cool. Well, awesome. All right, and I see folks are asking questions. I'm so excited to get to the Q&A part. So just for those who are joining, because I see a few more folks have joined, we will be asking Nabeela your questions shortly. I'm just going to ask her a few more questions just so I can learn about her journey with you guys, and then we'll open the floor to the questions you're asking. So please keep asking those in the comment box and in the Q&A box here on Instagram. All right, so can you rewind time with me? We're going to go back to, for you, it's your home because you're homeschooled, right?
Yeah.
Which is so awesome. There's a lot of people from your home who come to CCS, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about high school, Nabeela. What did you want to do when you were growing up? Did you always know that you wanted to do fashion? Tell me a bit about you when you were younger.
Yeah. I would say I started like drawing clothes when I was maybe like around 5 years old. I loved Barbie dolls, and I legitimately thought my career was going to be designing clothes for Barbies, like when I was a kid. But as I started getting older, I was like experimenting with clothes, kind of just like manipulating clothes I already had and kind of transforming them. And it's funny because I did always know I wanted to be in fashion. And before like I got into CCS, I thought I just wanted to be a fashion designer, like ready to wear, you know. But after being in CCS and being in the fibers department, I feel like that kind of is what switched things up for me as far as calling myself a costume designer, because it taught me a lot about different fabrics, different techniques, manipulating fabric, and all of that. So I would say like the fibers department definitely like pushed me more to like the costume now for sure.
So it's sort of shifted. It's still in the realm.
Yeah,
It's shifted as you went along.
I would say yeah, because I mean a lot of my work is still like fashion design. It's just more costuming, I guess.
Gotcha. And when you were in high school, were you looking at other schools? Did you know where you wanted to go to school? Like, what were your options that you were thinking through?
Yeah, I wanted to go to FIDM in California. I still like might go for my master's. I've still been considering that. But I knew CCS was definitely going to be an option. Like my mom graduated from there. Basically, all my siblings went to CCS. I just knew like CCS was going to be it.
So you're going to keep it in the family.
Yeah, keep it in the family, you know.
Well, we're glad you did, because you're amazing person and alumni. It's an honor that CCS got to keep you for a while. So question for you. You had a unique scenario in that your family all came from CCS. You got, you know, a legacy of CCS alumni. If you were to talk to a student who was considering, you know, entering the fashion industry, and was potentially interested in, you know, crafts or costume design or some of the things that you've done, what would you tell them about CCS?
I would tell them to definitely join the fibers department. It's like such a good department. It was like you learn so much about fabric. So anyone who wants like to learn about materials and like honestly anything to do with fabric, like fibers was definitely it. And it's funny, even when I was in school and people would ask me, they would be like, oh, I have to take a crafts class, but I don't know what crafts class to take. And I'm like, fibers, you should take fibers. Like, because I always loved it. I would talk it up so much. It's like a really good department for people who want to explore and, you know, learn something different.
That's awesome. All right. So a couple more questions for me, and then I'm going to get out of the way. I have about 2 or 3 more questions. So I know a lot of students ask about student life and the social scene at CCS. I know you have had a huge presence in the social scene at CCS. So if a student were asking, like, what's the social life like at CCS, what would you tell them?
The social life. Let's see. I mean, it's pretty welcoming. Like all of the students, like it was pretty easy to make friends with people. I think what I liked about CCS was people weren't competing. Like they were there like to help each other out. So that was like the main thing I really liked. And a lot of my friends that I have now, I met them through CCS. Like all of my best friends went to CCS, and I would say it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
That's one thing I'm learning through a lot of these alumni lives, is that folks are still connected with people that they were friends with at CCS, and they're like, but no, I see them every day. Like they're a part of my life now, you know?
Forever.
Yeah. All right. So a couple more questions. What was one thing you learned or gained from CCS that has really impacted your life or maybe changed the way you think about the world?
Wait, can you repeat that?
So what's one thing you learned or gained while you were at CCS that's really impacted your life or changed the way you look at the world?
Okay. Let me think about that. Yeah, my mom is. I would say, yeah, it made me work very hard. Before CCS, I was kind of procrastinating. I was a little bit of a slacker, not gonna lie. but CCS will kick your butt. Like
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to turning in assignments and working. I like that it kind of like pushed me. I would say that's like one of the biggest things that I took away from it was it pushed me like to definitely like get out there and just like work as hard as you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, last question for me, then we're turning it to the audience.
Okay.
So if you could go back in time and give advice to your high school self about pursuing your creativity, your path, or going to art college, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah.
Yay!
I don't know what happened.
You know, technology does what it wants to do, but it's not going to stop us from talking. Um, so I'm glad folks are rejoining the room. I know there were some questions folks asked in the chat in the last live before we got cut off. I remember some of them, but for those I don't remember, make sure you all add those into the Q&A box because I'm just going to ask one more question from Nabeela, and then I'm going to open it up to you all to ask your questions. So the question that we left off on was, what advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. What I was. It's a hard question. But I think what I was saying was just like not to give up. There was like a couple times where I felt like when I first started CCS in the fibers department, I felt like my work didn't really fit in. And I remember I was contemplating being like, oh man, like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if my work is good enough. But honestly, like when you first start off, like you're not going to be like a huge fan of your work all the time. I think like as I got older and as I started learning more and like kept going, like it taught me a lot. So I would say that would be the main thing I would say. It's just like keep going, don't give up. Like just keep working hard because the more you keep working, like the better you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say
that's huge advice. Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day. You know,
exactly.
no artist made their entire collection on day one. It is a journey. Yeah. All right. So I remember some of the questions from last time, and I know we have some folks entering some questions in the Q&A box now. So one of the questions that was asked was, what was your favorite class at CCS when you were a student?
So I had two. Can I say two? The first one was a class I had with Susan Aaron Taylor. I can't exactly remember the name of the class, but it was Alice in Wonderland themed. And that was like such an awesome class.
It was a liberal art class?
No, it was
a studio.
It was a fiber studio class.
Cool.
But the theme was like Alice in Wonderland. And the piece that I created in that class was one of my favorite pieces. And that was also the piece that was on the student show flyer, if you remember a couple years back.
Oh, yeah.
So that piece came from that class. Like that class it was just so fun. And that piece was also displayed in the Henry Ford House, like in Grosse Pointe too. So I was like,
oh, nice.
It was pretty cool.
So you got a lot out of that class. And what was the second one?
The second one I would say was the fashion class in the fibers department. It was taught by Annika. She was like a super hard, super strict teacher, but I took away a lot from that class as far as like fashion design goes because I never took any like sewing classes. Like my mom taught me how to use a sewing machine and then I just went from there. So this was the first class I had sewing, and I would say my favorite thing was I learned how to like attach sleeves like on garments, and that's one of my favorite things to do now is like sewing sleeves on dresses and blouses and stuff. And I didn't really know how to do that until that class. So I would say that was my other favorite.
And now I see you're doing it like you have several garments with sleeves. So
that's my favorite thing.
I have a question for you, and I want to make sure we answer some of the questions from the group too. But when you applied to CCS, fashion accessories design wasn't a major at that point. Do you think if you were to apply, like if you were in high school now and you were to apply, do you think that you would have chosen that major, or would you still have chosen crafts?
I feel like I probably would have got into fashion accessories, but then switched to fibers. I do like fashion accessories. I assisted a shoemaking class almost like 2 years ago. And that department is amazing. Like all of the equipment there is great. Like the teachers are super helpful. And there's just a lot of resources in that department. But fibers has my heart.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. I know someone else asked in the last live about has doing your craft all the time. I'm going to put it up here. Has doing your craft all the time as your job dampened your enjoyment of it at all? That's an amazing question.
I mean, sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I do get uninspired or just tired of sewing. The longest I've probably gone without sewing was a couple weeks because I sew every day. So it can, and like working like part-time, even doing alterations, I go to work and I'm sewing, I get home and I'm sewing, and I'm just like, all right, I'm tired of sewing. So like, yeah, it definitely can get that way, but I still love it.
What's your favorite garment that you've designed since graduating? Your favorite object that you've designed?
I would say, as far as garment, one of my most recent pieces I've done is on my Instagram. It's like a pink dress, and it's embellished, and it kind of just looks like a big puffy flower. I think I can't remember what I called it, but I would say that's like one of my favorite garments. I tried to do a photo shoot with my sister yesterday, so there'll be pictures posting soon. I would say that's my favorite though.
Nice. I know it's super amazing that you have a sister who's a photographer, because you guys just do shoots of your work, and it's just like, it's beautiful. Everything. I mean, the work is beautiful, but then the photographs of the work is amazing too.
I'm like, I couldn't do it without her, honestly.
You guys are a dynamic team. So for those I see there are still some folks who are joining. For those who don't know, Miss Nabeela here is an amazing seamstress, costume designer, fashion designer, and she graduated from CCS. So we're just talking with her about her career, about her, her passion, her inspiration, that gets her to design the amazing things that she's designing. So if you're interested in learning more about her work, her process, seeing more of her amazing fashion, it is amazing. I promise you'll want some. You can follow her at Seamstress Beela. So you can follow her hashtag. Look at me, Grandma Brandy. You can follow her here on Instagram to see more about her work. But are there any other questions for Nabeela? Any questions about fashion design, costume design, attending CCS, graduating from CCS, being in the industry? Any more questions that Nabeela can answer for you all today?
I did see one of my friends ask the question earlier. She was asking if I liked doing alterations for friends. That was Jennifer Bueso. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, I didn't see Jen was in.
I do like doing alterations for my friends when I can. They do ask. Sometimes I get asked a lot, and I can be busy. Oops, sorry. I can be busy with other stuff, but I do love doing alterations for them too.
So I have a question about like how you identify in your career, because you're a fashion and costume designer, but you also work part-time doing the alterations. Do you consider yourself to be an entrepreneur when you're not working part-time, or how do you, because you have your own like studio practice, like you're always making things. What do you use to describe that portion of your work?
Honestly, I don't know if I would say entrepreneur. maybe people might think of me that way. But honestly, I just think of it like a business. Like I think of myself as a one-person business. I do maybe would like to expand and like get help when it comes to designing something, because I've done like fashion shows and exhibits, and usually it's just me. So I would definitely love to like maybe expand at some point later on.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that I got to chat with you today and catch up what you're doing in your career. That's really amazing about having that piece in the DIA. It's cool that even within your actual fashion and costume work, you're so versatile, but to know that you can, do things outside of garments, that's really, really impressive and amazing too. One thing I almost forgot about, I also saw you were like making masks, like, but in your style.
Yeah.
I was like, what can't she do?
I was like waiting on materials because I was making masks for the hospitals. But in the meantime, before I got all of that, I was like, what if I designed a mask but using my materials? And like, that's what I did. I thought it was like just a fun, like lighthearted thing, trying to put a smile on your face instead of like being all sad, depressed.
It did exactly that. I was like, oh, that's so nice. I feel like whatever was in the air, it would just be neutralized by the beauty of it. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time, Nabeela. It's been great to chat with you. Are there any more questions before we hop off today, guys? I don't see any more questions in the chat or the Q&A box. But if you want to rewatch this interview that we had with Nabeela today, I'm going to add this to my live for the next 24 hours. So make sure you rewatch it. I want to thank you, Nabeela, for taking time to chat with me today.
Thanks,
especially bringing some beauty from nature with you. I really appreciate that. I haven't been outside yet today, so I'm very grateful for that scene. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions that you didn't ask here and you want to ask beyond, make sure to follow at Seamstress Beela and tune in Thursday because we have another alumni live that we're going to be doing in the evening on, did I say Tuesday? I meant Thursday. Tune in Thursday because we have another alum that we'll be interviewing from our photography department. Thank you, Nabeela, so much for your time. I'll talk to you soon.
Including me.
Of course. You're, like I said this before the live started, you're like one of the people that inspires me. I look at your stuff and I'm just like, I need to create something. So thanks for sharing your perspective and your journey with us.
Anytime.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.